So I'm so excited to be talking about the Whimsy and Wellness story,
I know, it's so exciting and fun.
right? It's like how she built this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just dive right in because we've had episodes with you before. So if this is
Mhm.
anyone's first episode with Hayley, there's a bunch. So we'll just dive right in. But obviously, Hayley's the founder of Whimsy and Wellness, and she runs this amazing brand. And we're not just a podcast. So if maybe some way you found this episode not from, our company, can you, Hayley, kind of tell people who only know about the podcast what Whimsy and Wellness is, not just the podcast?
Yeah. So Whimsy and Wellness is a brand, and we sell beautiful, wonderful, fun essential oil bottles. So we like to say that we like to make your routine anything but routine. And people are always like, but like, what's in the bottles? Where do you get your oils from? Like, what's in them? And I'm always like, oh no, they're empty. And they're like, what? You just sell empty bottles? And I'm like, well, yeah, but there's a reason. And it's because I started this company because I was using essential oils that I loved. I didn't want to buy essential oils from, somewhere else, like a perfume made with essential oils. It's like, no, I want to make my own perfume with my own essential oils, but I also want it to be pretty, like all the pretty perfume bottles that you see on the shelves. And so that's what we do.
Yes. And now it's just bloomed into, like, of course, roller bottles, but spray
Mm-hmm.
bottles and anything your DIY heart could imagine. And even if you're one of those
Yes.
people that say, like, I'm bad at DIYs, it's really not like DIY, like painting and a hammer DIY. It's like putting your essential oil in a bottle. Anyone can do
Yeah.
it.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so how did Whimsy Wellness start? Let's just start there.
Yes. Okay. So it was in 2016, March, I started it. And in 2015, I actually experienced two miscarriages. So I had a miscarriage in February. Russ and I then got married in June. And then we actually had another miscarriage in December. And with the first miscarriage, I was pregnant and I was actually going to grad school for career counseling. I wanted to work like on a college campus and I was so excited. And then the program turned out just to be a little bit different than I thought. It was very counseling focused. And I was like, whoa, I can't handle all these people's problems. I was just trying to help them find a career path. Okay. But like we were going through like heavy training for counseling because they're like, yeah, somebody might come to you to talk to you about their career, but every person has a story and a lot of things are going to come up during that conversation. So the program was amazing and they were absolutely doing the right thing. I was just having doubts about it being for me. And then I was pregnant and we were super excited. And then we were talking about like when the baby's going to be due the next semester, I should just take that semester off and then I can continue school after that. Well, I ended up miscarrying, of course. And Russ and I had the conversation of, well, maybe you should still take that semester off since you're having doubts. So fast forward to I'm taking a break from grad school. I'm kind of in between jobs, not really knowing what to do. I was actually working at Macy's over the holiday season when I had my second miscarriage. And it was so hard. I remember like I couldn't talk to customers anymore. Like I would just like start to tear up and be like, what is happening? Well, grief was happening. But just having that whole time, and I was just waiting to get pregnant again. We were trying and trying and trying. Then started nannying for a family. And I was, of course, using essential oils during this. And kind of like I said before, I was like, well, I want like a bottle that's not just like amber brown colored. Like brown is just not my thing, if you can't tell by our brand. I'm like, I know earthy colors are like it for some people, and it's just not it for me. And so I was like, there's got to be something better. And this is when gold was becoming like super popular. And I was like, you can't find gold any accents. So anyway,
Yeah.
I got this machine for Christmas that made labels, like you could cut vinyl with it, like your own stuff.
Mhm.
So I always forgot what was I putting in my rollers. So I scoured the internet for pretty bottles with gold accents. So our first bottles were clear bottles with gold caps. And then I made labels like in a cute scripty font and applied it to the bottle so that I would remember what was in it. And because I was in between jobs, I was like, I'll just start like a little Etsy shop. Like it'll be so cool. I can help contribute to our family's income, just like a tiny bit. And it'll give me something to focus on instead of just tracking and charting for when I could maybe get pregnant.
Yeah,
So that's what started it.
Crazy.
I
love
know.
that you're like, I could contribute a little bit to our family.
Seriously, that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now Russ works with Whimsy Wellness. It's so cool.
Yeah. It's really crazy.
I think that's a good transition into my next question, which like we also have a episode on grief. So if anyone listening has also experienced miscarriage, Hayley and I did, I think it was episode 2 or 3. It's one of the, if you scroll back, you can find our grief episode. And maybe that would bring you some comfort, or even just sometimes to just kind of feel like, okay, maybe this person gets even half of my story or something is really comforting. But can you kind of share, like, how did it feel to start a business when you were personally going through a hard time? Or did it really not feel like business, but more like a creative type thing?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It definitely didn't feel like I'm going to start a business. That thought like never crossed my mind. My thought was, well, I think this is kind of cool. I was always a creative person just throughout my life. I love to be creative. I can't draw for anything, but I'm creative in other ways. I think people think of creative as like drawing or, something like that. But anyway, it was definitely never, I'm going to start this business. It was, I think this is pretty cool. I want to do it. I have some free time and I need a distraction because it was just like, all I could think about was, okay, charting, taking my temperature every morning. I don't know if anybody experienced like really trying to conceive and having a hard time, but like it consumes your thoughts. And then not only that, it's like, okay, when can I get pregnant? But then it was, what happens after I'm pregnant?
Right.
It's like, it was so full of fear because the whole time you're like, is this going to actually result in me holding my baby at the end? So I just wanted a distraction to think about something besides tracking and charting and when and what if. And I started the Etsy shop. And at the same time, I started our Instagram. And I think, building a community around the Instagram was also super helpful. So I decided pretty early on to share about my miscarriages because at the time, this was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, no, 5 years ago, sorry. At the time, people, I didn't know anyone that had a miscarriage. Yeah. And, it feels very lonely and just hard, as grief in any form can. But I decided to share about it because I thought, well, if one person could, read it and feel a little less alone, then I think it's worth, being vulnerable and putting my story out there.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I think when people think of social media now, it's like so common to really share struggles. But in 2016, like people really were just like, here's my dog. And so it was like so brave to be sharing anything vulnerable or personal. But I think, like you said, you didn't know anyone who had experienced a miscarriage, but I think it's like 1 in 6, right? So we all know someone. We might just not know that we know someone. So I love that you were just open from the start and you created that community. So at what point did you realize, like, okay, this is becoming way more than just like a creative outlet and a distraction?
Yeah. So that was, I started it in March. And then by that summer, it was pretty like, whoa, okay, I'm working a lot. And I remember some summer days where my mom would come over and Russ would be there and and my sister would be there and we'd all be like around the kitchen table, like packing orders, like, because it was like, I couldn't keep up by myself. So it was only a few months in. Yeah. And it was just crazy. I just never expected that to happen. And when I think back to then, how many orders we were doing compared to now, it's even crazier because it's like, I didn't have any processes in place or systems in place, or like I had to figure out from the time we got an order through Etsy, how do I create that order, package that order, get the shipping label for that order, every single thing I had to figure out. And it was a lot. So
Yeah, so many hats.
yeah, a lot of hats.
Okay, so
I know. That's how I feel too, thinking about it.
it's like, do you ever look back just like, how actually did I do that?
Yeah, I think that all the time. I still think that to this day. How am I doing this? Yeah,
Yeah.
all the time.
Hmm.
Mhm. I think I
So
just kept showing up, to be honest. Like to me, for some reason, there was never an option to not do it. It's like, well, there's orders there. Like I have to give them their order.
right.
And like, it was just like, I have to just keep showing up every single day to
Yeah.
keep going.
Let's go back, and I just thought of this, but like, I think especially for someone who's maybe just starting out and maybe even selling on Etsy, I know Etsy also has completely evolved
Mm-hmm.
since 2016. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's maybe a little bit harder to sell on Etsy right now as far as just like reaching people maybe. And so how did you like get your name out there and your product? Like
Mm-hmm.
how did you get these orders coming in so fast?
Yeah. So I am no business expert by any means. I did not major in business. I never envisioned owning my own business. My major was parks and recreation, like the show. And it was the best. We went on field trips and I loved it. Yeah, everyone, I'd be like, oh, we're going on a field trip. We're going to a hotel in Napa. So yeah, I'm going to be gone for the day for school. And they're like, what kind of school are you going to? There's no field trips in college. And I was like, well, you're in the wrong major.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that I know that Instagram was a pivotal, big role in our growth. And I think part of it was I showed up on Instagram like as me and Whimsy and Wellness. I wasn't just like, here's this brand, like, and like never showed myself. And part of, I think the reason that I started doing that is because I wanted to connect with people. Like I was experiencing grief and I wanted to have a community. I was working for a family nannying at the time. So I didn't necessarily have like coworkers to like be around.
Yeah.
So I really wanted connection. And then the other thing that I did starting out pretty early on was I knew that people needed to know that we were doing this. And I had known a few people in the essential oil world that had bigger followings than me on Instagram. So I just reached out to them and said, hey, I started this business. And if you like any of these things, and like sent them some pictures, like I would love to send it to you. And if you like it, I would love for you to share about it. But of course, there's no pressure because I only wanted people to share if they genuinely liked what we were doing. And we got some people to say yes. And they shared. And like, once they shared with their community, then that community became aware of us. And then we would start to get some larger orders from like some essential oil teams. They wanted like, 50 bottles with this thing on it. And we would send it and they would give it to their people on their team. And so then those people knew about us. And so very much word of mouth, which I was so thankful for. We were the first company that I was aware of that created bottles with labels on them with gold caps. And like we were one of the first companies to kind of go in this direction of you need pretty bottles for your oils.
Yeah.
So I think that helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. And it's so crazy, like Instagram and just community is so, so important. And I think sometimes like because we're so close to our own stories, we think people don't want to see that. They just want to see my perfect picture perfect products. But no matter like what business you're in, how many people say, I don't even know who originally said it, but that like they buy you before they buy your product, right? And even a couple weeks ago, we had Brittany Ballard on the podcast who teaches the Susie School method. And she really shared in her episode about like you have to get your community, your following to know, like, and trust you. And I think like you really did that. People like knew Hayley. I think I told you this when, like, after you hired me, but when I was like, oh, maybe I'll work for Whimsy Wellness, we were kind of like in the interview process. What I remembered, like like in my head when I would think Whimsy Wellness were these roller bottles and this picture of Hayley that you've shared a bunch of times, like in the hospital with the oxygen thing on your finger. And it's like, it wasn't edited. It was taken with like an old iPhone. It's not like this fancy photo, but it was like you and your story. And it was just, that's really telling about a community when like, of all the things you've posted and the products, I was thinking like, oh, I remember this old post. And so I think that is so, I just hope like listeners that are building a brand don't forget that, like show you. People like they are interested in you and your story, you know?
I agree. And I think I didn't do that intentionally. Like obviously when I started my business, I wasn't like, I need to show everybody me so I can make lots of money. Like I did it like, I just did it because I thought I wanted community, like I said. And then it's just become a natural part of what we've done. But I think key is to show up as you. Don't try to, like you said, don't try to present things as perfect if they're not. Like you can talk about your struggles being a business owner or, navigating any part of your life if you're comfortable with it. Yeah. So I would just encourage people to do it authentically if you can. It's hard.
Yes, I know.
And I think also it's okay if you're like, but I don't necessarily want to be in front of I don't want to be the main part of my business. And I think that's okay too. But people do love to see behind the scenes. So even if it's not you and your family or you and it's something very personal story, they still want to see how do you make what you're making or what are your behind the scenes process look like? Whether you're building a network marketing business, like what are you doing today to build that business? Because I want to see that. Are you sitting in front of a computer with a spreadsheet out? What's on your spreadsheet? Or are you like, having coffee and doing Zoom meetings today? Well, who are you talking to? Like, how do you do this? Like people are intrigued by the how.
Yeah, that's so true. I think, and I've been saying this forever that like Instagram stories are just like our new reality TV. Like I just love like, what are they doing today? And so sometimes like while graphics are necessary when you have a business, sometimes it's just so nice. Like you said, like we want to be nosy. We're like nosy and interested. And not nosy in like a mean way, but I am too. Like I'm just like, if I think of some of my favorite brands and think if they were like walking around their warehouse or like introducing their team members, it'd be so fascinating. So just your brand and business can definitely be like pretty and aesthetically pleasing and also like real and relatable.
Real. Yes.
Okay, so hiring help, let's talk about that. How many like employees, contractors, all of that does Whimsy Wellness have?
That's a good question. Okay, so we have about 20 now. And that includes Russ and I, because we are employees of our own real company now.
Yes, so cool.
Yes.
So at what point did you decide to hire help?
Yes. So it was within that first year, I hired my sister and it was to help me pack orders. I was like, I can't. Back then we were creating custom labels. So like I was creating files of words that people submitted and like using my machine to cut them out. And then the process of like getting it to be a label, applying them to the bottles. Like there were so many steps, especially with custom orders. And we didn't have inventory. Everything was like, if you ordered this, it's like, okay, got to go make it, like, so yeah, I couldn't do all the things anymore. So I hired my sister to help me pack orders so that I could do all the other things. And, it's a little less scary because it's your sister. So, you trust that person already, but, eventually we outgrew and I just paid her. We didn't have like a payroll system, we didn't have any systems in place and we didn't have a bookkeeper. I didn't know what I was doing because it's new. And even still, I don't know what I'm doing. Don't let this fool you. But after my sister, let's see, who did we hire next? Gosh, I can't even remember. I can't remember who we hired after my sister. Oh, I remember. I put out on Facebook, as everybody does when they need help with something. They go to Facebook, right? And I said, we're looking to hire somebody. And I, when I was in college, getting my master's, I was a peer mentor to like incoming first year students. So I would help them throughout their first semester. And so one of my former students actually applied. And so she came and she helped me do the labels, and she helped me basically create our inventory. Yeah. So it was so cool, like these old connections. And it was like the perfect job for a college student. And she was so sweet. And yeah. I don't think it was a difficult decision, just because it's like, I literally can't do this on my own for those positions. I think the more difficult hiring decisions are things where it's like, well, I could keep working 50 to 60 hours a week. I could, and we would save money because we wouldn't have to hire somebody. But what is my sanity and life worth,
Yeah.
And so I think those hiring decisions are a little bit more difficult, just because you are basically trading money for your time.
Right.
And you have to kind of decide where is that threshold. And then finding the right people is hard too. It's like scary to trust your business with anybody besides yourself,
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially when you've just built, your business is like your baby, And so, to just like hand over certain things is like, I can't imagine. So like, how, besides like, hiring your sister and kind of where you are now with hiring people, like, how do you do it? And what is your advice for people who feel like they need / want to hire things out, but maybe they don't know how or where to find people? And I also do want to add that when I interviewed Casey Weekend, also like back in the beginning, she said that hiring help was something that like now looking back, she did probably like way too late. Like she should have hired help sooner. I feel like that's a very common thought with business owners, is like they look back and they're like, wow, I should have hired help sooner. But so I feel like if you're wondering, should I hire help? You probably should, right?
Yes. Do it. Do it before it gets way harder. Yes, I agree with that. I also feel like I should have hired a lot more help earlier than I did. And as a result of that, we hired quite a few people all at once last fall, which was amazing. But then you have to kind of dig yourself out of the whole, like, basically I put off creating systems and having processes in place because I hate doing that. It's like my nightmare, but it is so important for a business to be functional. And so it got to a point where I was the only person that knew how to do most things in our business. Not everything, of course. We had help with customer service and we had help with fulfilling orders, but most things, it was just me. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if something happened to me and I just couldn't work anymore? I was like, this is our only income for my family. Because at that point, Russ was working full time with us too. I was like, I can't do that anymore. Like it's to the point where we have to like have some systems in place, processes in place where I'm not the sole owner of all this stuff in my brain. So we had to backtrack a lot. Whereas if we would have started earlier, we could have put these into place. The whole process would have just been a lot more seamless for sure. But as far as like, how do you find the people and what is the process and all the things? I definitely hired a lot of people at the beginning from networking, like people that I met or knew, or like this person knew this person, like friends of friends or something like that. And I think that's definitely a good way to start. It just feels a little bit less scary than like interviewing a stranger, like a total stranger. Like they were strangers, but like they had at least some connection to us. So again, like I think definitely just reaching out on Facebook, like I think you might be surprised at the network of your network could have. And then just telling people that you know in real life or internet friends that you know. I think starting there, and if you still can't find the right candidate, then we have more recently posted on Indeed. We've posted on Facebook jobs. We've posted, of course, on our own Instagram, and we've sent out emails to our own community. But those are the main ways we've found candidates. And then as far as like the details of hiring, it's so much paperwork. I can't. Russ luckily has taken all of that over, and we found a really good system called Gusto. that is a payroll service. And without that, I don't know what we would do, because we've hired people in 4 different states now. And every state has their own like rules of the papers you have to file and the disability that this state needs, that state doesn't need, and sick time for this state and that. Oh my gosh, it's like so many things. There's no way you could keep track of it like on your own unless you like, so Gusto's been a lifesaver with that. And so everything payroll wise, all the employees pay bank account information is there. We run our payroll through there. They pay all of our taxes, all that stuff that feels very scary. And then the same thing with like insurance. You have to have insurance if you have employees. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where to find this insurance and how much do we need. And they helped with all of that because it's a whole thing.
You definitely learn as you go, it sounds, for sure.
Yes, you have to. That's the thing is people are like, well, how did you do it? Like what? And I'm like, if I knew everything that it required to run this business that I know now, I would not have started it 5 years ago. There's no way. I would have been so overwhelmed. Yeah, you have to just take it one day at a time.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I like you would, even if you are like, I need a graphic designer, but I don't know any graphic designers. You don't know who who knows a graphic designer, right? Like you can does anyone know a graphic designer? Mm-hmm. And I bet you someone will know someone. Okay. Mm-hmm. So before you hired help, like we said, you literally did everything. You were like the social media person, and then you would go make something, and then you would ship it. Mm-hmm. So what do you do now? And what roles have you hired out?
Yes, this is such a good question. Okay, so now my favorite thing is product development. I love it so much. So I'm 100% still involved in like everything from the brainstorming phase of product development all the way to getting samples from our manufacturers to ordering the final products. And that goes for packaging as well. So, and sourcing other products like crystals and all of that. So product development, I still 100% do and love. And then I also am still the like leader of our social media. So I do have help as far as like creating content, like scheduling content, creating stories and stuff, but I'm still like the main person that approves everything and all that. So I do all of that for Instagram still. And then I do a lot of like day-to-day things still, like, I don't know the best way to describe it, but I guess I'm still very much the voice of the company. So like the company doesn't do anything without it coming either from me or definitely being run by me. And then I'm involved in the beginning of pretty much everything, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I'm in a way more meetings now. I was just thinking about this today. I was like, oh, I never had meetings before because it was just me or like it was just me and Russ. Like we just sit on the couch and have our unofficial meeting. But I'm definitely in a lot more meetings now, but I love it because it's like, for example, today we had a marketing meeting. And so we had you on for the podcast. We had the person that helps us write blog posts on. We had our marketing coordinator there, and then me and Janessa, who is our integrator. So the integrator position basically make sure that all of those things that I just mentioned, plus some others, like all work well together and that they all have what they need. And we were talking about July planning, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about what's happening each week for marketing. And so I'm still involved in those kinds of things. And it's so crazy to think like, oh, we have a marketing person. I'm like, what? It's crazy.
Yes. So how did you kind of decide which roles you would let go of and hire out? And like, was it hard to let go? I'm sure there were certain roles that you were like, sayonara, I never want to do that.
Oh my gosh, right?
But were there things that you hired out that you were like, I know I have to stop doing that, but I don't want to?
Not really, to be honest.
Oh, that's good.
I think I just really believe in if you're passionate about doing it, you're probably really good at it. Or like the things that you love doing, you're going to do really well. Mm-hmm. So if you can keep that, you should keep that. And then you should look at what are the things I actually hate doing and just like dread it. And that is what you should be hiring for.
Yeah, because there are people out there who like love doing what you hate.
And they're really good at it.
Yeah, like the system thing you mentioned.
Exactly. And if you hate doing something, it's probably because you're not good at it.
Right.
And it doesn't mean it's a negative thing. There's no way
No.
you can be good at everything.
Yeah. And it not only that, but like it also, if you're not gifted in it or
Mm-hmm.
it's not a strength, it's also going to take you like triple the time, right? Like we
Yes.
have an admin, Hayley, and it takes her like
Mm-hmm.
literally in 16th of the time to make a beautiful spreadsheet. And I'm still there like,
Mm-hmm.
where do I type?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Seriously.
just definitely like own your strengths and then hand over the rest.
Yeah. I think it's really important to know what are your strengths. You have to know
Yeah.
that about yourself. Or maybe you don't know that about yourself yet, but I guarantee you know what you do not like doing. Think about what you have to do as a business owner or whatever it is you're doing. What are you like, oh God, I have to do that today? That is the thing you should look for somebody else to do.
Right, for sure. And
because it will give you more, it will
go
give
ahead.
you more time to do the things that you love doing, which will allow your business to grow.
And
If you can make $20 an hour in your business and hire somebody for 19 to do something, you're still profiting $1 per hour. So it feels very scary to hire help because, like I said, you're trading your own money that you're making for, some of your time back. But then think about what can I do with that time that I would not be able to do otherwise.
yeah, and that only you can do. There are certain
Yes.
things that only Hayley can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she can't hire someone to film videos of herself or to do product development because that is her wheelhouse. And so with the things that like you as a business owner, no one else can do, or the things that, like she said, you love, keep that for yourself. And then if there's, okay, we've definitely said enough with that.
We're passionate about it and do it now. If you're thinking that you need to, then you need to.
Yes. Plus, I just feel like this like time in the world, I think people are really changing like what they want in their lives as far as what they're doing for work. And I think a lot of people are looking for work from home work. Like, I think you wouldn't really struggle to find like a virtual assistant or something like that. Okay. What would you say your strengths are in owning a business? And then on the other side of that coin, what are your like weaknesses or struggles? I like to call them instead of weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my strengths are, well, I mean, I mentioned creativity. I think that that's definitely a strength of mine. And then we kind of talked about it, I guess, authenticity. And I did the strengths finders test. If you haven't done it, it's pretty fun. Costs a little bit of money, but it's pretty fun. And my number one on there was empathy. And I think I knew that about myself, but it was so helpful to like see it and like see it described, because I don't think that I would have necessarily pinpointed that out on my own, which I think kind of goes hand in hand with authenticity. I think that I really care deeply about people. And so whether that was, the Instagram community, when I first was growing, I cared about, I still do, of course, but you care about those people. But then now as our team has grown, it relates to like everybody on our team as well. And so I think that's definitely a strength of mine, is like just caring about people and who they are and how they're feeling. I guess another way it relates to the business is customer service. I always said, like, without our customers, we would not be a business. If nobody's buying from you, you're not a business.
Yeah.
And so I was always so passionate about taking care of our customers, because they are literally the reason that Whimsy and Wellness is a brand and a company.
Yeah.
And so I think that's definitely been a strength in growing this business and making people feel really valued when they purchase from us or when they work for us, or even if they're just following along on our journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as like not weaknesses, what'd you say? Opportunities. Struggles. That's what we say. Struggles. Yeah. I mentioned it already, but definitely there's for sure. I definitely think systems and processes, and even honestly, like strategy. I am not a very strategic person. I just don't see things in a strategic way, or like, I remember at one point, someone that was working for us was like, what about hiring like an administrative assistant? And I was like, what would we have an administrative assistant do? I don't even know what we would have them do. I said this out loud for real, like a year ago. It's because my brain is not good at thinking of every little task. My brain is not very detailed, I guess. And so it was really hard for me to sit there and think of all the things that an administrative assistant could do. But there was somebody else on our team that was like, well, they could do this, 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 this. I was like, oh, yeah, they could. Good point. And so I really do believe, like we talked about, like opportunities, areas of growth. I think that if you know that that's not a strength of yours, it doesn't necessarily have to be an area where you grow. You can just hire somebody that is really good at it already. And then guess what? You never have to do it or grow or try really hard or take 5 times longer than somebody else.
Self-awareness is such a great thing to have, and knowing like I am not good at this is so helpful in all areas of life, but especially business. And it's not like your identity, who you are, is not in weakness or strengths, right? Like you are a good person without your strengths or weaknesses. So like to just kind of know, this is what I'm good at. I am not good at this. Like maybe you're the other side of the coin listening, thinking I am not creative at all, but I can do systems. It's not, your identity isn't in that, but to just kind of know those things is self-awareness. Such a great
I know
thing.
Well, and we all need each other, like you said. Like I can be Russ and I complement each other very well. He is very like numbers. He can like do math in his head that I'm like, I can't even like multiply 6 and 4 or something. I don't know, but he can do these crazy things in his head, or he can like look at a space and know how much product will fit in that space just by like looking at it. Yeah. I'm like, what? I can't do that. I just can't. And I will never be able to do that. So I think it's okay to know these things and then fill in the holes, and we all need each other. Cause like Russ would say, I am not creative. I could never do the things that you do. And I'm like, I know. And I could never do the things that you do. And we need both of these things to make the business run.
Yeah. So true. And that's a good note too with hiring help. Like you don't want, even though it might sound like such a party to hire people just like you and just like you do need people who are different from you, because otherwise you will not get the things that are hard done. The things that are hard for you done. Okay. So what's the biggest lesson you've learned since becoming a CEO?
Oh my goodness. Woo, this is a hard one. Man, I think it's like not knowing your limits, but like you have to become even more self-aware with your own life, I guess, and like time. I think when you are a CEO of your own business, you can work as much or as little as you want, basically.
Yeah.
And I think there was definitely a point where I was working way too much. I think it got to, like, I was just thinking yesterday, actually, that so I have 2 daughters now. One is 3.5 and one is almost 2. And when my 2-year-old was born, I was literally working in the hospital within a couple hours after she was born. And I didn't take a maternity leave with her. And I look back, and so when she was born, my other daughter was only 19 months old. So like things were very hectic. You have a 19-month-old, a newborn, and you're running a business. But like, I don't remember a lot from when she was a baby because everything was just so hectic all the time. Like between our other daughter, obviously, we didn't have regular childcare then. It was mostly Russ and I still running the business, and it was our only, family income. So I think I look back and I wish that I would have taken time off to be with her.
Right.
Like fully present. So I think obviously things like that will probably come up, and you might have like, some things you wish you maybe would have done different. But I think just being super self-aware of, because yes, the business is so important, but also your life is very important too. And so there's not always going to be a perfect balance, but I think fighting to make sure that your life and your relationships away from the business stay strong and healthy, and that your own self-care comes into play somewhere there is really important.
So important. This this might sound a little harsh, but don't get upset. I didn't say it. I heard this somewhere. So blame the guy that said it. But I think it's so true. He said, like, if you're a business owner and your business like doesn't function when you walk away, like you have to be there for any money to be made, anything to work, you don't have a business, which is like, I know that's so hard and like a little rough, but it is kind of true, right? Like being a business owner, you're creating like, what is a business, right? And if you have to be there, it's more of just a job, right? That you're showing up for. So the fact that like you've been able to now build something, like you just went to Hawaii, right?
I know.
And so like, it's not like Whimsy and Wellness was just closed and no one could purchase anything and no money could come in. Like, so I think what you were just saying with looking back and kind of wishing that you had kind of taken time off, but also like looking at right now, like you've pivoted so well, and that like you can step away and like there's still, and that's because you've put the systems in and hired help and
Yes, I will say, yes, I agree with everything that you said. And I think that was kind of my wake up call that I mentioned a year ago of like, what if something happened to me? Like, what if I got in a car accident and I just couldn't work for a month? It was really scary to me. Or what if one of my family members got really sick and I had to take care of them? That was when I decided, okay, we really do need to make some changes, do the processes, systems, hire people. But, that was 4 years into the business. So before that, we also made the conscious decision of Russ and I grew this business just with the money, the profits that we made from the business. So we never took out a loan, or I watched Shark Tank. I don't know if anybody watches Shark Tank, but we love it. We recently heard about this company and she was telling they're 5 years old, blah, 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 and they had never turned a profit. And not only that, but like, they're like, okay, so how much did you lose last year? And she's like, 1.4 million. And they're like, okay. And the year before that, they're like 1.1 million. And I was like, my heart, I'm just like, I just don't have the like guts to do something like that. Like that is so much money. That's what they lost.
I have chills.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But I guarantee you that their business from the very beginning, with injecting that kind of money, was a business where the owner operator could walk away and it was still running. Right.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you're listening and you're starting a business, you're like, well, I need to be there doing my business every day because I'm the only one and I don't have the kind of money to inject in hiring all these people and everything. That's totally fine too. I think it's just making sure that you're, checking in every now and then with the life and work balance, and then deciding to hire help sooner than later, even when it feels really scary.
Yeah, it's for sure seasons too. And like, for sure. And I think like with that, like if you can't walk away, I think that's definitely like years down the line. So definitely don't feel like if your business is like brand new, it would probably be hard to find business owners who could just be like, okay, 6 months in, peace out, see you guys later.
Right.
Unless maybe this is like their third company and they have millions to invest, like Hayley said. So anyways, okay, if you could go back and tell 2016, 15 Hayley something about running Whimsy and Wellness, what would it be?
I think it would be something like, oh, just you wait. Or like you don't even know what's coming. Yeah, just because that. Like I said, when I started, there was literally no part of me that was like, I can't wait till we become $1 million company, like, or nothing. Like that wasn't even a thought in my brain. And I think I've learned and grown so much throughout this process. But yeah, I think back then, really the hardest thing that was happening for me then was wondering, when will I be pregnant? I was like, if somebody could just tell me on this day, 2.5 years from now, you'll be pregnant, I'd be like, okay, I can wait 2.5 years. At least I know. And so I think I would probably, just tell myself that you'll have two daughters, 19 months apart. Good luck.
You asked for it.
Right? Your wishes are coming true.
I love that. Okay. And then if you could sit down for coffee or your choice of beverage with like a new business owner who's maybe like a few seasons behind you, right? Like in motherhood, it's like the best thing ever to talk to a mom in a season ahead of you. Hayley was that for me like a million times. Like I'm just like, how do I get Acre to sit in this baby carrier? It's so nice to have people that are like seasons ahead because they're like up on the mountain and they can be like, you're doing it, keep coming. So if you could sit down for coffee with like a new-ish business owner, what like advice would you give to her or him?
I think the biggest piece of advice would be like, keep going. Just as simple as it sounds, just keep doing something for your business, each day. That doesn't mean you have to work 50, 60 hours a week. If you want to, that's fine. But I think the only way that you're going to really, really lose is if you give up. If you just decide, I'm just not going to do this anymore, and maybe that's the right decision for them at that point. Obviously it is because they're making it, but I think just keep going. And I think the other thing that's been really helpful for me is kind of like you said, is finding someone who's also running a business. It doesn't even have to be similar to yours, but just someone that has done this before or is doing it now that you can like talk with. I've shared so many resources and like gone back and forth on like feedback for things with other business owners. And it would be really hard to do it without having that kind of community that understands a little bit.
Yeah. And how would someone like find something like that?
I know. I knew this question was coming. It's a great question because I wonder the same thing still now. I mean, I have people, but I'm like, well, how do I find someone that's, like a business consultant even? And again, it goes back to marketing. Or not marketing, to your network. So I became friends with the owner of Put on Love Designs. Her name is Chelsea. And then the owner of Modern Makery, her name is Kate. And our businesses all started kind of a similar time within a year of each other. And we found each other on Instagram. It was started out as like, do you want to do a giveaway together? And we're like, yeah. You do a giveaway. And then it's like, oh, well, then we kind of kept chatting in DMs. And then like one of us would ask a question and we'd answer. And then it's like, hey, do you guys want, like, what's your phone number? Is it okay if we text, and it just kind of grew from there. So, I mean, I know it sounds so weird, but like, if you admire somebody in business or like you've seen somebody else's work and you're like, oh, that's so cool. Like ask them if they want to do a giveaway or just ask them, like, just start the conversation. The worst that's going to happen is the conversation doesn't go anywhere and you try again with somebody else.
Internet friends. They're the best. And it's not super hard to like find internet friends or even like acquaintances. I think people are like super generous for like the most part. I think like that you could probably find a couple like people that wouldn't share, but I think it's like surprising, when you like DM someone and ask a question and you think, oh, are they going to answer me? And then maybe they won't, but sometimes they do. And you can really like learn something. I think it was Mel Robbins. Ooh, you guys, my memory is just like mashed potatoes, but I think, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Mel Robbins or maybe it just wasn't at all, but someone was saying how like, instead of asking, Hayley, can I get your advice on this? Ask, you built this company, like what's your story, or like and it doesn't have to be broad as story, but like tell me about your success with building an Instagram community, because like sometimes people are like more likely to open up and like share when it's kind of worded like tell me your story versus like help me. I need advice.
True.
Because it just, I don't know. I think like even subconsciously on the other end, it doesn't feel like, oh gosh, this person needs help. And that might take up a lot of time versus like, oh, they're just curious about my story. And, you know, we can be as selfless as we want, but everyone knows that we love to share our own stories, right?
It's true.
So
that's a really good point. Yeah. Good tip for when you're reaching out to your internet friends.
Yes. Okay. And I hope that I tried to think of all the questions people might have for you. So hopefully I asked them all. If I didn't, you guys should DM us at Whimsy and Wellness Podcast on Instagram, and maybe I'll have Hayley back. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But to close, like practically speaking, are there like resources or programs or podcasts or that kind of thing that you like swear by and would recommend for people?
Yeah. So we wrote a blog post on this, like of my 5 favorite resources that we can link in the show notes if in case you need to like, you know, click over to see the things. But I think especially in the last year, we've implemented systems and processes, and they really have made our life easier. Who would have thought? But one of the things that we use is Monday.com, which is like a to-do list builder, but it's like collaborative and it's like can be way more than a to-do list, but it's like a project management system. And I was like, we don't need a project management system. Like we don't have that many projects. And I was like, oh, we do have a lot of projects. Okay. Yeah. So like we have like, you know, a section for the blog, a section for the podcast, a section for Pinterest, a section for Instagram, a section for product development. Like I could go on, but, and then with each of those, it just allows you to organize all the different processes that go along with just one seemingly simple task, I should say. And it's very collaborative as far as you can assign different people different things and write notes to each other. And so helpful with organizing all of that and creating to-do lists. Yeah. And then we recently started using Slack, which is kind of like a work chat, basically. So again, we have different like chats going. So like one for events, one for the podcast. And it's just like a much easier and faster way than emailing. We used to email each other. Now we just Slack each other. Like that sounds so just, I'll Slack you. I was like, I don't know if that's an insult or I don't know, but yeah, it's just so much easier to just do the chat than like emails back and forth. So those two have been like really, really helpful. We also recently, I was like, how does a business store and manage so many files? Just like so many pictures and videos and recipes. And I'm like, this is so many things. So luckily we have an amazing organizational guru, as we call her. But we decided to purchase the Google Drive plan. I know this is like super detailed, but I did not know what was best to use. And we were looking at a few different options. So we decided to purchase Google Drive. We pay per user. So each employee on our team, we pay for their account, but basically it allows all the files to live in one place and they're owned by our company. Because we were using just regular Google Drive before, and then we had somebody leave and all of her files that she created were going to be deleted if she deleted her email address. So we're like, oh my gosh, this is like, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not think about this. Like, this is a huge deal. So we had to like have somebody transfer all the files over. So anyway, this was like a really big deal. You have to weigh like the cost versus benefits, right? And I was like, we're not going to pay $10 a person when we can do it for free. Yeah. And then that happened and we're like, oh, we need to pay $10 a person. So Google Office, I think it's called. I don't know what it's called, but it allows you to organize all your files. Your business owns them. And then you can also use like Google Meet for meetings, like video meetings and all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I mentioned Gusto for payroll. It's super helpful. Yes. I think those are kind of the main like tool. Oh, well, I guess going into social media, we use later.com for planning and organizing social media content. What else do we use? We use Tailwind for Pinterest. It schedules out your Pinterest content. I feel like there's probably a bunch more that I'm missing, but those are the main ones that we use like pretty often. Cool. Yeah, those are helpful. We will link them in the show notes for you guys. Okay. Are you ready for rapid fire? As ready as I'll ever be. Okay.
what is a failure that turned out to be like a blessing in disguise?
Oh man, this is a deep rapid fire. Ooh, okay. A failure. Let's see. I mean, I guess quitting grad school.
Yeah.
I really felt like it was so hard to tell like my family and like, I'm not going back to grad school. Like you feel like a failure, like you started something that you did not finish.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt, yeah, like I failed grad school. I didn't actually, but I just didn't finish. And then Whimsy and Wellness happened.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Okay, who's your entrepreneurial girl crush?
Another good question. I think that maybe it's not one specific person. I think that I get very inspired by there's so many women, particularly on Instagram. That's where I see them because I spend a lot of time there, that are like hustling for their own businesses. And I love the stories, I guess, because they're similar to mine, where they started with nothing and now they've built a brand and a business.
Yeah.
And I mean, we are in the oil industry, so I see a lot of them that are doing it as a network marketing. And I just find it so amazing to just watch their stories. And yeah, there's a lot of them in network marketing. And I think sometimes it gets a bad rap, but I've seen it with my own two eyes that like it's real and it changes people's lives. And I just love watching that transformation.
Yes.
It's inspiring, like that anybody could do it.
Yeah, I agree. For sure. Okay. What's your second favorite podcast since Whimsy and Wellness?
Obviously, this one's my first.
Number one.
It is. Okay. Well, this is kind of hard. It changes because I like to like, sometimes you're like in a serious mood. You want to listen to like, or like sometimes I'm like super like, okay, I want to grow our business and I want to like listen to business podcasts.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I want to listen to something funny. But I will say lately, I have been enjoying Brene Brown's Dare to Lead podcast. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a good mixture of business with just like storytelling. It's kind of like how I built this sometimes, mm-hmm. with a little bit more practical advice in there.
Yeah.
But I love it. But I've also been I started listening to Glennon Doyle's. She has a new one out.
Yes, we can do hard things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Pod Squad.
I don't know what it is about Glennon's voice. She's like Mama Glennon. I could just curl up in her lap and take a nap. Is that weird?
Yeah. I listen to her books on audio, so I know. I agree. It's like soothing. I'm like, yes. Okay.
I'm just like, wow, I'm in love with you. Okay, it's getting weird. Gotta go. Friends, listeners, if you haven't read Glennon Doyle's books, go read them, and then you will come back to this moment of me saying weird things, mm-hmm. and you'll be like, I get it. She's a beautiful writer. Like, jokes aside, she is such a good writer and just like really makes you feel like seen and understood. And I don't know, mm-hmm. It's really good. She has 3 books, but my favorite is Love Warrior and Untamed. So, okay, there's a little plug. Do you think we can be sponsored by Glennon?
Yeah, maybe. Our next guest is.
Oh, I think I'd pass out. I'd be like on the floor. Okay. Do you have a roller blend that you love using like when you're working or trying to get into like a creative zone or anything like that?
Yeah. So I prefer, I don't know if it's that I prefer if I just forget to use oils like when I'm starting to work, but I do the diffuser because it's right here in my office and you just, touch the button and then it's done and it smells pretty much all day. So I love to diffuse citrus and mint during the day. I feel like it's like happy, but energizing. Yes. So usually like a standard go-to is peppermint and orange or lemon, mm-hmm. really easy, basic. Yeah. But today I did lemongrass, tangerine, spearmint, and vanilla. Mm-hmm.
Whoa, was it good?
I mean, yeah, it was nice. But Russ was like, it smells like bubble gum. Did you mean to do that? And I was like, maybe I did. Maybe I didn't.
To do that.
But it smells nice. Like lemongrass, I think is a little underrated, but it instantly smells like fresh.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I love it.
So good. Mm-hmm. Well, this has been So fun. I feel like I learned stuff about Whimsy Wellness. I hope people whether you are a business owner, entrepreneur, dreamer yourself, or maybe you're just maybe you've just been a Whimsy Wellness customer for a while or you're a new customer, either way, and you're just kind of curious. I just love hearing people's story, whether it's someone's personal story or a business story. I think there's something about really liking products from a business or, whatever they're selling. And then you hear the heart behind it and you're just oh, I love that even more. So I just hope that it was, nice to listen to for those people and then encouraging and helpful for business builders.
Yes, me too.
So, yay. Thank you for sharing.
Of course. Thanks for having me on this podcast. On my own, on our own brand's podcast.
Yes. Okay. Bye, friends.
Bye.